Welcome to the YouTube Sports Network. I am your host. I should say I am the local report. I have an Instagram account. Well, I had an Instagram account well, it felt like many years ago, and it was called the Local Report. And I was doing pretty good on that thing. And then I lost the password. I didn't remember the password. I stopped logging on, this, that, and the other thing, and I couldn't recover the account. I can't remember. Well, I don't have the same phone number as I did before. I don't have the recovery email as I did before, I guess. So I want to somehow get back on that local report. If there's somebody who knows how to get around that and maneuver it, I mean, in this day and age, someone can't log on to their Instagram account, regardless if you don't have the same number, if you don't have the same email. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's me, but I would like to get back on there. But nonetheless, let's get going. Let's get going as far as what I want to talk about today. And you know, I have so many things I want to cover. So many. By the way, the lighting is beautiful in here right now. It has to do with the time of day. What is it right now? 5:08 p.m. It has to be the time of day because when I try to do this later at night, it's more dimmer and darker. But we got good lighting going on over here. I got my little chair in the corner over there. I'm going to read my book on Harry Truman. It's what was it? The Accidental President. I got this book on Amazon called The Accidental President, and it accidentally stumbled across my page when I saw that, and I saw the price was slashed like 70%, and the book was about $8. And I said, you know what, whatever. I want to read something that is probably not that complicated, easy English, because I picked up a book by Carl Jung, a psychologist from way back when, and I can't seem to follow and comprehend what the heck he's trying to say. He's using English, and he's using words from the English language, but he's speaking in such a way that my brain isn't quite processing it. And I figured if I can read a book that's a little bit easier language-wise and sentence structure and the vocabulary and the diction that they use, then maybe it's a good segue into the more complicated work. Accidental President, Harry S. Truman. Okay, so hold on, the train's coming. Hold on 1 second. So, what I want to talk about today, we're going to do this on one take. All right? I may or may not have stopped the most previous recording, but let's get to this one real quick. Two things I want to talk about in this video. I have so much to talk about. I have so many things I want to talk about. I have a crazy trade going on between the Eagles and the Bills, what I think could possibly happen. Two needs for each team. I want to talk about Blake Snell, too. Blake Snell is dominating for the Dodgers right now, and I feel like there's been something going on with the fact that I have to look into it deeper, but was he hurt for a little bit recently? Was he hurt for a while, then he came back, and now they slowly eased him back, and now that they have him basically in mid-season form with not a lot of innings under his belt. I gotta look into that again, but Blake Snell is super dominant. This guy's been good since he stepped onto the mound, a few years back with Tampa Bay, but I'm drifting here. I drift sometimes. I want to talk about Za'Darius Smith, who just retired yesterday from the Eagles, and I want to talk quickly about Mike Tomlin and what he said about Joe Flacco. The most recent video I did, I talked about Joe Flacco and how I thought it was pretty odd that the Bengals and Browns would swing a trade together considering they're in the same division and it's during the season. So like I said, it's very strange for the same division, but very strange within the season. In the same division, but within the season. It's like kind of odd. The game's already started, and it's just odd to make a trade, regardless between two opponents, two divisional opponents. So I thought that was weird. And then Mike Tomlin, I saw yesterday. Here's a quote. Here's an exact quote from Mike Tomlin on the matter. He says, "To be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a divisional opponent that's holding that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings. Okay? So to be honest, it was shocking to me that Andrew Berry, who's the GM of the Browns, he must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me that you would trade a quarterback that you think highly enough to make an opening day starter, which is what the Browns did for Joe Flacco, and trade him to a divisional opponent that's hurting in that area. So you're helping your divisional opponent, like the Bengals, helping them get better at quarterback. But that's just my personal feelings. That's what he said. Mike Tomlin on the Joe Flacco trade. I'm right there with you. I thought that was very odd too. I mean, like I said during the last video, I guess the Browns aren't worried about the Bengals and the Bengals aren't worried about the Browns, right? Those two teams mostly are the ones that have to worry about the Steelers and the Ravens. Ravens, by the way, are 1-5 this year. That's like going over people's heads. Or people do notice, but isn't that kind of wild? It goes to show you how important Lamar Jackson is, of course, obviously. But yeah, that's how Mike Tomlin said, and that's what I thought initially. So I guess he was able to come up with that, or they asked him about Joe Flacco, because they're going to be playing him in a couple days, in 2 days, Thursday Night Football. My thoughts on that in a second. How did Joe Flacco do in his first game? Remember, he was trying to become the first quarterback in NFL history to beat the same team twice in one season while playing for two different teams. He did it when he was when he was a part of the Browns earlier in the season, a couple weeks back, and then he was trying to do it while he's a member of the Bengals. But they didn't win. They actually lost 27-18. Was it not? What was the score? Hey Siri, I think I know this. What was the score of the Bengals game against the Packers? Hey Siri, NFL scores from week 6.
Here are the results from the NFL for week 6. The Falcons
27-18, that's right. I just watched the highlights of the game too. You would think, I know exactly. But I'm getting a lot going on over here. I'm writing a lot of stuff. So how did Joe Flacco do, right? Joe Flacco, in that game against the Packers, he actually went 29 for 45. That's 64.4% completion percentage. He threw for 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 90.9 QB rating, which is the best of the season so far for Joe Flacco. And he only took 1 sack in the game. So for 219 yards, that's and 29 completions, that's 7.55 yards of completion, which is so crazy that I literally just said 7.55 yards per completion, because the time elapsed. The second I said 7.55 yards per completion, there was 7 minutes and 55 seconds elapsed on this clock right now during this video. That is wild. Okay, talk about symmetry. So in that game, Jamar Chase had 12 targets. He had 10 catches, 94 yards, 1 touchdown. The longest catch he had in the game was 19 yards. T. Higgins had 8 catches for 62 yards. That's the most yards he had in a game this season. So I mentioned those two guys because, like I said in the last video, they're one of the best receiving duos in the NFL, right? Higgins and Chase. And if they can only stay together on the field for a whole season, with being able to be on the field together, you want to see how they would do together. But this is good to see as a Bengals fan. Now, watching that game, watching the highlights, you can see that Jamar Chase had something going. Well, he's amazing. He's going to be able to get something going with most quarterbacks. But him and Flacco had something. They were throwing a lot of short routes, and then in the second half, they were getting a little bit deeper down the field. You can see why Flacco. Now, I was criticizing a little bit because, talking about the possible options they want to bring in. I was talking about Jameis, this, the other thing. But if anything, what hit me, I came to this fact or this conclusion that they just want stability right now. They want stability. They want a guy who they know what they're going to get. They don't have to worry about too many turnovers. And I did say, yes, Joe Flacco had 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions coming into this game of the season when he was with the Browns. But there's a different, the Browns, it's not like most quarterbacks on that team is going to be throwing, it feels like, more touchdown passes than interceptions. It always feels like it's difficult for that offense to break through. And it's a little bit of a slow start. He could have turned it around possibly with the Browns. But Joe Flacco with the Browns really was going nowhere when you had two rookie quarterbacks on the roster that you want to get have a long look with. So Flacco, it makes sense for him to go with a team like the Bengals, right, who are looking for stability, who don't want to turn the ball over too much. Jake Browning has 8 interceptions. Despite the 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions is a lot. So they wanted more stability, so I can see it. And he looked, like Joe Flacco is. He's cool and calm and collective. He's very upright. He didn't have to scramble much, which is a point that I made, but everybody knows that part. But he looked like he was dropping back. He knows where he's going to go. He knows where he's going to go with the football. And in fact, on the touchdown late in the game to Jamar Chase, he did something that it might seem easy and might seem like is required, but unfortunately, a lot of these young guys probably don't know how to do it so well. And it's so simple. And I don't play football, so I can't tell you how simple it is. It's just a look away. He got the ball and he looked left, and he knew he was going to throw right. So he got the ball, and he was looking towards the left part of the field, and nearly right before he throws the ball, he looks right, and then he accurately makes a perfect pass. And Jamar Chase was being held on the play a little bit, but he's that type of receiver where he can still make a tough catch on the throw, and he caught it and he scored. So you can see it. If anything, this could actually work over there in Cincinnati. This might have righted the ship. This might have actually, in a way, saved the Bengals season the best they could. And I'm going to say right now, I actually think I have a feeling they might actually beat the Steelers. I actually think I'm going to just put my neck on the line. I'm going to say the Bengals are going to beat the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. It's in Cincinnati. The Bengals have lost 4 in a row. They started off 2-0, now they're 2-4. I just feel like they're not going to keep losing. Like eventually, these losing streaks are going to come to an end. Some of these winning streaks are going to come to an end. But I think I like a losing streak coming to an end this week. I don't know. I'm going to put it out there that the Bengals are going to beat the Steelers. But that's not why I'm here. I'm just here to tell you, Joe Flacco, I can see it now. I can see it a little bit better, and he might have had a lot of short passes. That's what you're going to get with Joe Flacco. He's not going to make a lot of, high-risk plays. He's going to extend drives, and if it doesn't work, they're going to punt the ball. They're just not going to turn the ball over. So more methodical, more like make the right play, make the right read, make the safe read, and then eventually chip, and then get down the field. If anything, he's got, two, like I said, some of the two of the best receivers, one of the best wide receiver duos in the league with Higgins and Chase. So I can see that actually working out. And there was something there. 10 catches and 94 yards with Chase. So I think if anyone is a Jamar Chase owner in fantasy football, that they should feel okay about it, because I think this could actually work. I'm going to move on real quickly. I want to talk about Za'Darius Smith. Yesterday, Za'Darius Smith abruptly retired from the Eagles. He's a pass rusher. He's been in the league for a few years now. He started in 2018. He was a 4th-round pick in 2015 by Baltimore. That's where he played his first 4 years. He was a 4th-round pick from the University of Kentucky. It seems like Kentucky has those good pass rushers from time to time. If I'm not mistaken, Bud Dupree, I think, went to Kentucky as well. And so he did he was a part of a big hole over there, I guess you could say. He was a part, what does it say? Sum of all parts or something like that. What I'm trying to say was Baltimore is more of a unit, right? And he was a guy that you've noticed from time to time. Like, who's this guy Smith? Rookie year, he had 5.5 sacks. Second year, he had 1 sack and 61% of the snaps. So he quite didn't make too much of an impact as far as sacks are concerned. This is Smith with Baltimore. And then in 2017, he had 3.5 sacks. That's in 4 starts. And then his last season in Baltimore, 2018, he's 26 years old at the time. He had 16 games, 8 starts, and 8.5 sacks. And he played in 67% of the snaps. And that year, Baltimore was 2nd in the NFL in points per game allowed. So he was making his way in the NFL. And then it became time for him to be a free agent. And the Packers saw something in him, clearly, and if you saw him play, you could tell that he had an impact. So they were ready to give him more of an opportunity. Packers did, right? Because they needed help defensively. So what did they do? They signed Smith to 4 years and $66 million. So that's a big jump, considering that, this guy hasn't quite lit it up yet, but did enough in his action in the NFL where he's racked up about 17 sacks and just about 17 sacks in 4 years. So they figured, this can be a very underrated free agent signing. So they signed him and Preston Smith, a free agent from Washington Redskins at the time. They signed both of those guys in the offseason, and they immediately made a difference for the Packers. Smith and Za'Darius Smith. I remember, that's right, the Smith brothers, Preston Smith and Za'Darius Smith, literally caused havoc. Instantly caused havoc for the Green Bay Packers. From 2019 and 20, these guys really helped Green Bay win back-to-back 13. They won 13 games back-to-back seasons over there with the help of. In fact, Green Bay had three straight 13-win seasons, 19, 20, and 21. But 19 and 20, the Smith brothers played together. And Za'Darius Smith, in his first season with Green Bay, had 13.5 sacks, led the team. And Green Bay finished 9th in points per game. The previous season, they were 22nd in points per game. So these free agent additions instantly helped Green Bay. And so then the very next season, Smith again has 12.5 sacks. Now he's 12.5 sacks, and that was first on the team. And that was actually the second on the team was Sean Gary, who had 5 sacks. So he was, far and away had more sacks than the next guy, you can essentially say. So this is Smith back-to-back seasons. He plays 84% of the snaps. Green Bay is 13th in points per game in 2020, 4 spots fewer than they were the previous year. But regardless, he's a difference maker. He's a beast, right? In third year with the team, he gets hurt in the first game. So that was really tough. That was a really tough loss for him personally. Even though Green Bay still won 13 games, this, that, and that thing, it was still a tough shot for him. So this is a guy who's now establishing himself in the league and has established himself in the league as one of the better pass rushers in the league. So what does he do after that? 2021, he misses it. He signs a deal. He signs a 3-year, $42 million deal with Minnesota. He plays 1 season there in 2022 at 30 years old, right? And he gets 10 sacks. And he gets to also play with Daniil Hunter, who was one of the best, most underrated, I feel like, and the best pass rusher that no one talks about, who's going to make the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done. He's probably the most ripped guy in the league, even more than Myles Garrett. And he has over 100 sacks, I think a few sacks over 100. Quietly doing his thing. Doesn't get a lot of love. He's in Houston now. I've always been like, why does this guy get talked about that much? Anyway, Minnesota, he plays in 70% of the snaps. Minnesota's 28th in points per game that year. All right, but he did what he had to do personally. So what did they do in the offseason? They traded him to Cleveland for 2 fifth-round picks. So now Cleveland has him, right? We mentioned Cleveland earlier about, the Browns and Joe Flacco. Cleveland comes back in the picture. Smith goes there. Now he's playing with Myles Garrett. His first season there, 5.5 sacks Smith got. So not too many sacks counting stats. But Cleveland did go 11-6 that year. So that was the second 11-win season in the last 4 seasons, and under Kevin Stefanski, who's the head coach for Cleveland. So I'm just painting the picture here. I'm giving you who Za'Darius Smith is. This is a guy who started with Baltimore, was finding his way, was actually contributing, signs a big contract with the Packers, plays really well for them, gets hurt, goes to Minnesota, gets 10 sacks. They trade him to Cleveland. He gets 5.5 sacks, okay? And then Cleveland, they restructured his deal, actually, in fact, when they traded for him. They gave him a 1 year, 10.5, so he wasn't getting that about $14 million a year that he signed previously in Minnesota. Okay, no big deal. After the season, they re-signed him to a 2-year, $23 million contract. Browns did. Browns didn't do too hot. All right, that year, 2023 with Smith, the first year, points, 13th overall in points per game allowed. Last year with Cleveland, in 9 games, they were at that time, overall, they were 27th in points a game. Cleveland was. But in 9 games, Smith actually had 5 sacks with Cleveland. And what did they do? When Aiden Hutchinson got hurt from Detroit, the Browns and the Lions worked out a trade, and they sent Smith over to Detroit, and he had 4 sacks in 7 starts. And he played 60% of the snaps. Right? So he was traded to Detroit for a couple draft picks again. So, I mean, then he had another year left on his deal because he had signed that deal with right before the 2024 season, 2-year deal, 2024 and 2025. Once he got traded to Detroit, finished out his contract, finished out his year, Detroit released him. This happens from time to time. They released him. They didn't want to pay him. I guess they couldn't afford him. They didn't think they wanted to pay him. He needed it, or he deserved. I don't know why I use the wrong words, but they wound up trading him. And what they did was they released him. They saved some money, and at this point now, he's out of a job. So as the offseason goes on, apparently Detroit and him wanted to work out something. He wanted to return to Detroit. Detroit wanted him to return, but they couldn't come to terms, which I always find weird. If you want somebody and they want you, what the hell is stopping you? Sometimes logistics and semantics and negotiations and preferences don't actually wind up or work out the way they wanted on both sides. So it just did not work out the way it was. Now Philly comes calling Smith. Philly already had traded Bryce Huff, who was a pretty big free agent signing for them. He came from the Jets. Philly signed him. Last year he didn't do too hot. They traded him to San Francisco. Josh Sweat, who's about to make a lot of money as a free agent, he signed with Arizona for 4 years, $76.4 million. He's in Arizona now. Milton Williams, 4 years, $104 million. He was another Eagle defensive lineman. He went to the Patriots. So now the Eagles, and Brandon Graham retired. So the Eagles now, who finished second overall in points per game last year, they're down some really, really important players. So Smith comes on board. He doesn't have any training camp. He doesn't play first week of the season, but he signs on for $4.25 million, right? That's a pretty decent deal. You know, I guess if you're looking for a job and last second you need work and that's what you signed for. So Za'Darius Smith he plays in 5 games. He gets 2 starts. He has 1.5 sacks, and he plays in 38% of the snaps overall. Now this is 22%, or about almost 30% less, 25% less than he played with overall last year. So they won the first few games with him on the roster, but then they lost to the Broncos 2 weeks ago. They lost to the Giants on Thursday Night Football last week, and Smith at that time wound up only playing in 24. I think he only played about, against the Giants he played in about 24% of 25% of the snaps. The week before that, 46%. The week before that, 50%. So why did he retire? He didn't really give a definite response. No one quite knows why he abruptly just said, "I'm out of here." People are saying that it's because the Eagles aren't doing too hot. People are saying it's because he might be hurt. People are saying it might be a family member. We're all speculating. That's exactly what we all do. We just speculate when we don't know exactly what the hell's going on. It is kind of odd considering they really need him and he was going to contribute or at least get a playing time. I don't know. Maybe it had to do with the fact that he figured we just lost to the Giants. We got crushed by the Giants. We got pretty much they roughed us up. They were probably tougher than us. And I only played in 25% of the snap, and you signed me for what when you really needed me? I don't know if that has something to do with it. That could be a thing, but these things fluctuate. He's also 33 years old, which I kept pushing. He's 33. He's 33. He's 33. I know it's a big number around football. In fact, a lot of guys recently have retired at the age of 33. Tyrann Mathieu retired at 33. Teron Armstead retired at 33. He's 34 now, but he retired at the age of 33. This is all before the season. Who else? Anthony Barr announced his retirement. He's 33, but he's been out of the league for 2 years. He just retired. David Andrews is 33 when he retired. I'm just saying, what's up with that number, that age 33? They really always put it out there. This is all for my conspiracy theorists out there who talk about 33. But yes, that's what's going on. That's what happened with him. You know, I noticed that when I have this on my hand and all that, and my fucking stats, I slow up and I get staggered. I know you people probably get bored and like, here we go over the stats again. Here we go over the stats again. It kind of takes away from the flow. Because I can tell you the story without that shit, but I also like to give it to you, give you the statistics. And I feel like stats are facts, facts are stats. So why did he retire? Who knows? Pretty weird, pretty abrupt. Does he come back? We don't know that either, but that's the story. Za'Darius Smith retired, and Mike Tomlin had something to say about Joe Flacco. Interestingly enough, when they're about to play each other on Thursday Night Football, and sometimes those things have a way of just like turning against you, or you know, karmic cycles or whatever. Not that Mike Tomlin deserves any bad karma, nothing whatsoever. But it's almost like, oh, be careful what you say. You said you're questioning why I'm here. Now I'm going to show you why I'm here. And then maybe the Bengals beat the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. You know, I'm just saying. I would go out on a limb and pick that. I would pick them. I would pick them because I think there's going to be something there. And I just don't see the Bengals losing 5 games in a row. I don't. So there's my rant. I said it's going to be quick. And here we are, 26 minutes and 18 seconds. And I'm going to be back because I got a few more things to talk about. Peace out.